Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the creepiest you've ever seen at night? Please remember to like, share, hype, listen and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe. I live with my girlfriend in student accommodation, and we share a small room that is mainly just a bed, desk, and bathroom. The bathroom sticks out in the room, causing the bed to be tucked behind it in a corner. One night I come in around 3 a.m. and she's fast asleep and the room is silent. She likes to sleep with a small panda bear stuffed animal, and it is usually tucked underneath her arm. Not this night. In near total darkness of the room, I come around the corner and find myself staring right into the eyes of a soulless, dark-eyed corpse sitting bolt upright in bed, staring back at me. Very rarely do I feel terror, but this was one of those moments where everything goes cold. You're rooted to the spot, and everything in your brain grinds to a halt. My eyes adjust to the scene, and it was just a nest of pillows upright with the body of the panda bear tucked behind them, with the face poking out the top, innocent and harmless as anything. In Germany, I was driving back to base one night after leaving a hotel. I decided to take a back road instead of jumping on the highway directly. I was cruising through this little town, and the speed limit was about 30 kph. I slowed down, and as I approached a church, something caught my eye on one of the pirouettes. As I looked at it, this thing jumped off the parapet onto the sidewalk, looked my way, and ran across the street. It ran on two legs, but was hunched over and low to the ground. As it got to the street, it leapt up onto the 15-foot wall of the cemetery that was across the street. Then it looked my way again. I hit the gas and didn't look in my rear view the entire way home. I ran upstairs and jumped into bed and pulled the covers over me. I told a buddy about what I saw, and we decided to drive down there that weekend. We got to town and arrived just as church was letting out. We stood there, and I was pointing out to my buddy where it happened when one of the priests approached us and asked us if we needed help. We reluctantly explained why we were there, and he simply said, "Oh, you've seen it. If you're here now, it means you know ill will." We asked what it was, and he told us that they don't talk about it. As we started to leave, two older ladies approached us and told us to be careful about what we look for, because we might find it, or it might find us. I and a buddy were taking a stroll at night on a beach in Florida, Lido Key Beach if it makes a difference, after a big dinner. It was midwinter, and the wind was really whipping. It had to be in the low 30s with the wind chill. Because of this, the beach was deserted. No one. The moon is out, lighting up the place so well everything is casting shadows. So we're talking and whatnot when we notice there's a guy walking parallel to us but right near the surf. They were near the sidewalk because no one in their right mind walks near the surf in winter. The water is freezing. I point him out to my bud Jim. Nothing really that odd yet, but this guy is keeping perfect pace with us. He's wearing a hoodie, so we can't see a face. Hands are buried in his pockets. We speed up a little. He speeds up at the exact same time. We slow down, he does too. Okay, whatever. My friend and I are both large guys, and this is one dude. Jim tells me this guy might be looking for trouble, so be on your toes. I should mention that this being Florida, the beach is flat. Not even sand dunes. No place to hide. Everything is flat and wide open. It's just us and the mystery dude for as far as we can see. This guy is throwing off some pretty aggressive vibes. He's been following us for 15 minutes and has now started staring right at us while walking, not even looking where he's going. I turn my head to my buddy and tell him this guy is nothing but trouble. I turn back, he's gone. There's no place this guy could have disappeared to in the 4 seconds I turned my head. No dunes, no lifeguard towers, nothing. It was hundreds of feet to the sidewalk where we were. The only place to go would have been the water, and that was a death sentence considering how cold it was. Jim and I just stand there in stunned silence, looking in every direction in the bright moonlight for the person who we had been watching and following us for the past 20 minutes. It was goddamn creepy as shit. I was about 13 and camping with a Girl Scout group in these woods over by the local elementary school. We rented cabins and got settled in. While unpacking, a fellow scout seemed really nervous, but I assumed it was her first time camping, or maybe she didn't like camping. It was near dusk, and the scout leaders gathered us to eat and tell stories, basically to just goof off. The girl that I mentioned was even more nervous. She had barely spoken a word to anyone, so I asked her what the matter was, and she looked at me and said with a shaky voice, "There's someone out there." I kinda wrote it off because we were at camp, and you'd think of course there would be people around. I just patted her shoulder and went off to grab some snacks. Some time goes by, and I'm feeling really drafty, like cold spots and slight breezes running through our cabin. And this was around the time we had to get ready for bed. That girl was bedded next to me, and there were 2 others on the other side, 4 beds placed per corner, who were talking amongst themselves, and I was trying to talk to the nervous girl about anything to try to get her to open up a bit. Sometime later, the other girls are sleeping, and I couldn't. I had this fear of complete silence and darkness together. The nervous girl was breathing kind of heavily, like she was starting to have a panic or anxiety attack. So I turned over to her to ask her what's wrong, and she said with her voice barely above a whisper, "There's something stalking our cabin." I immediately freak out internally, and my eyes dart to the window opposite of me. Nothing. The window behind me. I was so scared, I saw the top of someone's head, only to down to the bridge of my nose with fingers resting where the mouth would be. I froze. Tears started to flow out of fear. This thing stared at me for only a few seconds, but it felt like hours, and I couldn't scream out of fear this thing would come get me. Or, also, if the scout leaders came in to investigate, they'd only think I was just imagining things. I knew she saw it too, by the look on her colorless face. Years later, I looked up if there were any hauntings in that area or something that might explain what we saw. Turns out a local farmer killed some girl back in '93 just outside those woods, where she apparently spent a whole lot of time. I'll never go back. Not only was I scared shitless and suffered nightmares for a while due to it, but it felt evil. I remember the eyes looking merciless and powerful. Gives me goosebumps all over again. Alright guys, a pretty simple shout out today, a happy one, to Lucas Pansy. Happy 4th birthday to your dog, Milo. Other than that, I hope you guys are having a relaxing weekend. Mine was filled with lots of work, but this is the pleasure work. So I enjoy seeing, or at least talking to all of you, but hope you guys are having a great weekend, and see you soon. There's a beautiful sunrise behind me right now over at Bethpage State Park on Long Island. Bye. The Christmas before last, I was lying in bed at my old house with the lights off and the blinds open. It was a beautiful night. The sky was crystal clear, the moon was full, and you could see the stars perfectly. Well, see, one of these stars was kind of funny looking. It would flash from orange to green so quickly, it seemed as if it was blinking. At first I figured it's an airplane. Nope, it wasn't moving in a straight line like an airplane, or hardly at all. So I thought, okay, it's a satellite maybe. But that wasn't it either. It kept wiggling back and forth like a pendulum in the same spot, not moving. 10 minutes went by and it started spitting something. It looked like faint, tiny shooting stars that vanished after a few seconds. To be sure I wasn't high on drugs, I called my friend who lives in the same county, and sure enough, he saw it too. So we're sitting there wondering exactly what this thing is and what it's shooting into our atmosphere. And then suddenly 2 others just like it start lighting up and doing the same thing, wiggling and spitting and flashing orange and green. After a few minutes of this, they stop wiggling, stop spitting, and stop flashing. They suddenly move off, just like airplanes, except quieter and a hell of a lot faster. I don't think it was aliens, I think it was the government. I don't think Mexicans have that kind of technology yet. This will get buried, nope, but whatever. When I was 13, I was at a friend's house for a sleepover. Usually when we stayed at his house, we slept in the basement, but this time we slept upstairs in his living room in front of 2 big sliding glass doors that led to his backyard. As we settled into bed, one of my friends looked outside and saw an owl sitting on a patio chair about 3 feet away from the door. Not scary, but really cool. We all looked at it, and it tried to move closer, but it flew away. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I woke up to use the bathroom. I walked to the bathroom and came back and lay back down on the floor by the window. As I'm lying there, I see something glowing really far away in this backyard. I watch as it gets closer and closer, moving through the fence, deck, and whatever else like they weren't even there. It gets close to the glass and I see that it's a face, but it's not human. It's like a mask, kind of smiling, but with deep round eyes set back in the sockets. It comes up against the glass and looks right in at all of us, almost scanning, stopping for a few seconds on each of us that were sleeping there. It looks at me and I freeze, completely terrified. It does kind of a low, breathy rattle, tries the sliding handle, locked, and then pounds on the glass door twice. Everyone else wakes up, but it's gone before they see it, and we move to the basement, scared out of our minds. I honestly don't even remember which direction it went, but it was there and then was gone. I tried to describe what I saw, but I was pretty shaken up. I didn't sleep that night. I was around 16 to 17 at the time and making my way back home from a day out in summer. It was late, around 11 p.m. I had just gotten off the last bus that night and the stop was a 5-minute walk from home. So I wasn't too bothered about getting home late at night, as I did it often in the summer. As I crossed a quiet road, for some strange reason, no streetlights were on, which made it really creepy and darker than usual. I'm walking the usual way I've done many times, but as I turn a corner at one point, there's this car driving by, and as I walk past it, it just stops and reverses onto the pavement right next to me. In my head, I just thought, am I gonna die? Should I run? But I keep my cool, and one of the tinted windows went down and some strange guy asked me for a description and name of someone. Can't remember as it was a few years ago, but I was creeped out. I said, no, sorry, and I began to walk home again. But what was the creepiest shit about the whole thing? He didn't just drive away. I kept turning around as I became paranoid, and he was slowly following me down the road. I didn't know what he wanted. Forgot to mention I heard other voices in the car, which was worrying. But at one point, he went on the pavement again, and then I thought, and turned down a longer pathway the cars couldn't access, but at least they couldn't follow me. As I turned around for the last time, they were pulled up, staring at me. Arrived home safely and haven't had a strange encounter like this in a while, I was a camp counselor in a remote area. Former campers and counselors had always told me that camp was haunted, but I don't really believe in that shit. Anyway, it was the last night of the session, and I had a cabin of 9 to 10 years old. I woke up in the middle of the night to find one of the kids sitting in my bed. I was a little groggy, but I remember him getting up and walking outside. I was like, shit, I've got to go after him and get him back in the cabin. I remember that he opened the door noiselessly, and that was the last time I saw of him. As soon as this happened, I woke my co-counselor and told him that a kid left the cabin and that I was going after him. I opened the door and it squeaked like a motherfucker, and then I tripped over a bunch of suitcases that were on the stoop. It was the last day of the session, and we always put the kids' suitcases out there so they would get picked up early in the morning and loaded onto the bus home. I searched all around the cabin and in the surrounding area for about 5 minutes. I then heard my co-counselor calling me in a hoarse whisper, so I ran back to the cabin. He said, I just counted the kids, they're all here. I still don't know what I saw that night. So this happened to my friend, but her story is super disturbing to me to this day, so I'll share. I live in a college town and my friend is still a student. She was walking home from the library late one night to go back to the sorority house where she was living. She got to the house and realized that she didn't have her keys on her, so she started knocking on the door. This guy popped out from the bushes beside the house where he has apparently been lurking, peeping toms at every college town, you know how it is, and said hi to her and then walked up onto the porch where she was knocking. He started talking to her and she asked him to back off and told him he was trespassing and stuff. Her phone was at the bottom of her backpack and kind of hard to get to. He told her he would leave if she hugged him, and when she refused, obviously, he started to get really upset and called her a racist. She was white, he was black, for not hugging him. This went on for a couple of minutes. When she finally just decided to hug him, because she didn't really see another option. As soon as she hugged him, he left. Creepy night. I was working the graveyard shift, yeah, I know, at the San Jacinto State Park in Idlewild, California. One other park aide was helping me shut down the park for the night. And as we walked around shutting off lights in the office, we chatted about our campfire programs. As I was talking, I noticed a burning feeling at my side. It hurt enough that I grabbed my side, and as I did so, I noticed that my keys had inched almost out of my pocket. My keys fell back, and I looked up at Matt. I thought he'd been laughing. I'd just stopped mid-sentence to slap myself, but no. Matt had both arms spread out at his sides, was standing bored stiff, and was shaking as if he was being shoved around. I yelled his name, not once but twice, and finally he shook his head and looked down at me. His expression must have mirrored mine, an equal measure of terror and embarrassment. I don't know, he said, sheepish. It was as if something just went through me. We set the alarm code and got out of the building as swift as ninjas. The next morning we joined the other aides in our routine morning meeting, and the park ranger, Rick, asked how the night had gone. This is when we can impact relevant info about rowdy campers, rattlesnakes that we had to shift away from the park, or any other things that went down during our shift. I glanced at Matt, and he was shaking his head and gritting his teeth. Feeling mischievous, I said, "Yeah, Rick, actually..." After relating the night's events, Rick deadpan asked if we noted the event in the log. Wait, what? I asked, thinking it was a joke. I said, "Did you note it in the log?" I replied, "No," still thinking that he was joking. Seriously, 8 people were in the room, and the silence that followed, you could have heard a proton settle on a leaf. He then very, very seriously advised all of us to read back through the logs. The office and nearby residents had been the site of many strange and disconcerting experiences for years. "No problem, Rick. Also, I will be unavailable to work the night shift for the remainder of the summer." Yet we all still had strange experiences during midday. I remember one day when an acorn came pelting through the office and bounced off the wall behind me. Thinking one of the guys was playing a joke, I reached down to fling it back. Nope, it had glue residue on it. It had come out of the plaque on the wall just in front of me. I was kind of glad when the summer ended. Earlier I posted about something that happened to my group of friends and me in '96. I honestly don't know if it was supernatural. I'm somewhat of a skeptic myself. I know that my friend's terror was real, while the events of my other experiences were accurate as I remember them. I have to say it was not the scariest thing that has ever happened to me personally. I only say that because I never got a clear answer about what really happened to them. For me, it was a few years earlier. In December of '93, I was living in Aurora, Colorado at the time. It was 9 p.m., and I just finished my martial arts class and was waiting outside for my mom to pick me up from school. My martial arts school was in a small shopping center near a well-traveled intersection on the west end of Aurora, near Denver. Adjacent to my school in the same parking lot was a Chuck E. Cheese restaurant. It usually closed around the time my class got out, but occasionally some of us would go in and play video games or get breadsticks while we waited for class to start. This particular evening it was terribly cold. It was mid-December, but the winters in Colorado can be somewhat mild. I was still pumped from class, and I was running around the parking lot with another one of the kids from my class. We were distracted, so we did not see the figure enter Chuck E. Cheese. It was the loud popping noises coming from inside the building that got our attention. Before we could grasp what was happening, a kid came running out of the restaurant with a gun in his hand. He practically ran right into us. The next thing I know, he's pointing it at my face. He just stood there for a minute. It was like time froze. I could not take my eyes off the barrel, and all I could think was that this was not the last thing I wanted to see in the world. After what seemed like a long time, but was probably just a few seconds, I looked past the gun at his face. He was not even looking at me. He looked scared. I could see his finger on the trigger, and I wasn't sure if he was going to pull it or not. I was frozen and could not have stopped him if he was. Instead, he turned and ran without a word. I watched him go, glued to the ground, amazed that I was still alive. He took off around the side of the building and was gone. My classmate and I just sat on the pavement. Neither of us said anything. Eventually, my mom showed up to give me a ride. I'm sure she was curious why I was acting funny, but I could not bring myself to tell her what happened. As far as I know, she still doesn't know to this day. I did not sleep that night. The next morning, I heard people in school talking about what happened. The kid's name was Nathan Dunlap. He murdered 4 people I personally knew in cold blood. He critically wounded another. He had ditched the gun in his attempt to escape. That led to his arrest and eventual conviction. He was to be executed earlier this year for that crime, but was given a stay by the governor of Colorado. Having known that he had killed those people, I believe he would have killed us too. I'm not sure what distracted him that night, but I'm grateful my family knows I was there that night. I don't think they know the extent of my involvement. I was never questioned about it, and until now I've never volunteered information about it. I am now because of some things you have to learn to let go of. I was walking in the waterfront park with my girlfriend after seeing a movie. It's in the city, but it was a quiet Wednesday night, so not many people were out, and it was around midnight. We're standing there looking at the water, holding hands, when we notice another figure in the otherwise deserted park. I don't think much of him until I notice he just kind of pacing back and forth about 200 yards away. Upon looking at him, I notice there's something wrong with his face, but I can't really see. We decide maybe it's time to walk home, but as we do, we notice he starts walking at us. In our path home, soon the streetlight hits him, and I see he's wearing an odd 80s neon jacket, but he has fully bandaged his entire head and hands and is wearing sunglasses. Think Invisible Man, but obviously younger and more built. He's holding something in his pocket of his jacket and kind of keeping his hands in it, kind of mulling it around. As we close in on each other, I think, well, this is it. We're going to be mugged and we're murdered. Just as we close within 15 feet, he starts to tug at his jacket, and suddenly light appears behind us as a pack of 5 cyclists come casually into the scene. The Invisible Man immediately breaks off and starts walking off into the grass. Luckily, more people followed on foot and bike from behind us, and the situation diffused as he wandered off. But I still wonder if we weren't about to get mugged or harmed, or if this was just some unfortunate guy out in the wee hours of the morning. This happened to my dad in about 2002 or so. He used to be the chief mechanic for a small high-powered boat racing team. They often competed in races in Key West, and being a small team, my dad usually drove either the boat or the tool trailer to Florida from Michigan. On one trip, he was driving through Alligator Alley at about 3 a.m. when the truck's engine started to stutter. The lights were flickering on and off, and the truck was threatening to stall. So Dad started to look for places to pull off the highway. Unfortunately, there's a crapload of marsh or swamp and a narrow shoulder along I-75 where he was. Apparently, while he's looking, the truck loses power completely, and now he's driving a semi-truck with a 40-foot power boat on a trailer completely blind. He managed to use the rumble strip to stay on the road and pull off safely, but he's freaked out by now. Once the truck is stopped, he realizes he's about to piss himself from fear or stress, so he hops out of the truck and walks around to the shoulder to pee. As he's letting loose, he notices some weird lights in the ditch along the road. They keep popping up and then disappearing or moving and getting closer and closer to him. It takes a bit, but as he's finishing up, he realizes that the lights are eyes, and there are dozens of alligators less than 10 feet from him in the ditch. He slowly zips up and inches back around the front of the truck, then books it for the cab. He ended up having to wait a few hours surrounded by gators for the other truck to catch up and fix his rig. He swears he probably never been as scared that he was going to die or be dismembered. I was walking home late one night from a friend's house. It was about an hour-and-a-half long walk, but I was drunk and determined that I didn't want to crash on their couch that smelled like cat pee. I'm maybe 5 minutes away from my house in a nice suburban area when this white windowless van drives by. Then it drives by again and again. I turn into a cul-de-sac because I was getting creeped out. I'm a 6'4" dude, but I really wasn't feeling this van. I knew that at the end of the cul-de-sac there was a pathway that led to another street that was closer to my house. The van didn't drive by again. This time it careened around the corner and was coming straight at me. I ran as fast as I could into someone's backyard and hopped the fence. I heard the van screech on its brakes as I waited behind the fence. A couple of guys got out and started walking towards me, talking to each other quickly. I just started running. Fence over fence, through backyards and backyards until I got to my own. I waited to ensure the coast was clear and went inside. All the lights were off in the house, so I knew that I wouldn't be seen from the outside. Over the next half hour or so, the van slowly drove up and down my street a few times. I didn't call the police or wake my parents for some reason, although I should have. I never found out what the hell they were doing or whatever they were looking for. To be honest, I don't want to because it could have been me. I was once on vacation at my cousin's house. I woke up in the middle of the night randomly. For some reason, I was drawn to the bedroom window, which overlooked the cul-de-sac they lived in. This was a new development, and there was a couple of houses still under construction. At the end of the road was a flatbed semi. It must have been there for a while, as it was used to haul material for one of the homes being constructed. The bed of the semi had to be close to 20 feet long and about 4 to 5 feet off the ground. What happened next is still unexplainable. I saw a child who must have been between 8 and 10 years old, about the age I was at the time. This child was rollerblading in the middle of the road. It must have been 3 a.m. or later, and this child was all alone. My eyes followed the child as they picked up speed, going straight for the flatbed truck. I was able to see both the child and the truck due to a dim streetlight. I feel as if the child should have been able to see it as well. Next thing I know, I see the kid seemingly disappear underneath the semi. The height of the bed was just short enough that it looked to have hit the kid right in between their shoulders and head, decapitating them. As I turned around and went back to sleep, I thought it was a dream. To this day, I still have no idea if it was a dream or not. I never talked to any of my family about it, and never heard if anything had happened to a neighborhood child that night. I suppose it'll stay a mystery. I work security all over my city. We got contracted for nearly anything, but my main site is a data center in the business park. It is fairly rural surroundings since it's about 30 minutes outside of the city. Basically, I do 5 tours of the building in a night to check the systems, computers, and appliances for anything out of the ordinary and obviously for potential unwelcomed guests. There's a part of my tour where I exit the building into an equipment yard where there's a 10-foot-high iron fence guarding the cooling units. Beyond the fence, about 7 feet, is a line of landscaping that contains mostly pine trees, so they've still got all their brush in the winter, and I'm walking along the length of this fence one night toward the cooling units, and I noticed deer tracks in the snow the other side of the fence. I thought nothing of it since I've seen them in adjacent fields nearby. As I check the coolers and scan my tag, we have 20 tags to scan to prove the area has been checked and that we weren't ducking around. I hear the trees rustle, there's no wind and some light snowfall. So I spin around and squint into the tree line. Nothing. I begin to walk back, and at that point I see a tree begin to move. I freeze in place and slowly pull out my large flashlight. The owners of the building don't want any sort of weapons on site, so this was the best I could do. After about 5 seconds, a large wolf emerges from the tree line, and we stare at each other down for about 10 seconds before I slowly start to sidestep away toward the door to the building. It never took its eyes off of me. I made it inside and promptly had a miniature heart attack. The next morning I tell my boss to check the camera history. Only he has the password to check previous camera records. He looked and sure enough, spotted a pack of wolves moving through the adjacent fields during the night. I can only assume one of them broke off to check me out and probably saw me walking around. It must have been coyotes, but this was huge, and I understand they're not big on pack mentality. They were probably on the hunt for the same deer that made the tracks I spotted. I still can't keep my eyes off those trees at night. About 4 years ago, I and 5 friends went up to our camping spot in the bluffs above our hometown. The spot is located in the bluffs along the Mississippi in Minnesota, and this particular spot is directly overlooking one of the state's oldest and creepiest cemeteries. Anyways, it was a clear night with just a bit of moonlight. We wanted a fire, and so we all set out into the woods looking for dry wood and sticks. The side of the hill is very steep with a large patch of grass and a steep cliff. The woods are about 8 feet from the cliff and fire rig. We all bust out of our cell phones as lights and start digging around in the brush, and I lose the group by about 10 feet. At this point, I find myself crouching in what appears to be some sort of low brush and digging for loose twigs when my light falls upon my strangest and most up thing I've ever seen. There, about 2.5 inches off the ground, I see what appears to be almost a floating ostrich egg. I just sat there for about 2 seconds in absolute shock when it turned. It turned slowly to reveal a face, a wrinkled, old, black-eyed, disembodied head. It stared at me for a good 3 count and then zoomed off. I do not mean it ran off. I mean it zoomed off like the Starship Enterprise. I was so in shock and absolutely fear-struck that I just walked back to the fire and sat silently for the rest of the night. I've not gone back into the bluffs since. It's been years, and I will not go. The whole town has this horribly creepy feel to it, and the woods are crawling with weirdos, but no one has ever experienced anything like that.